Hello, and welcome to the Iron Maiden. My name is Abby, and today I'm not talking about Vincent. Instead, I feel it's necessary to talk about Flesh and Blood and artificial intelligence. We'll get into the exacts in a second, but first, I'm going to give you a warning. I'm not an expert in the field of AI, training or using. I don't use AI personally. Yet I do have a lot of knowledge on the subject that I have learnt from articles or reading online. So I will be having a list of sources in the description for a few things you can read if you want to have a little bit more knowledge on the subject. I will have that in a list in the description, so if you'd like to find that, you can go down there and see a few things that I've put there as further reading. If something in this video tickles you and you feel like you want to know more about it, you can check out there and there might be something for you. If you are someone who's already pro AI, I recommend you do listen to this video. You might find some points you agree with, maybe not all of them, but it's okay. If you find one point you agree with, it might support you in understanding other people's opinions and why they might feel that way. And if you're not going to understand my opinions or the opinions of the community, then make sure you leave an angry comment so that it boosts the video for me. Why do I personally care about this controversy? I love Flesh and Blood. If you've watched anything on my channel, you would know I talk about Flesh and Blood a lot. And if you know me in person, you know I spend a lot of the time I'm not on the channel also talking about Flesh and Blood. AI to me is very negative for a lot of reasons I'll be covering soon, and AI being in Flesh and Blood affects my experience of the game. It affects me in thinking about how LSS designs the game, and it basically sours a little bit, so I need to talk about it. I think that LSS doesn't need punishment for this. I'm not someone trying to shut down LSS. I think there's very few people, I've not heard anyone say that they want LSS be punished or anything similar. But what we do want them to know is that here's our opinion about why we would not like AI in the game. There's some opinions about where it would be acceptable and where it would not be acceptable from other people. But those opinions need to get to LSS, so they can understand the player's stance on AI, and they can understand where they can use it and where they can't from a community perspective. My perspective has always been that they should not be using it at any point, but I'm going to share some other people's opinions as well. The ethos of Flesh and Blood has been extremely well known to the player base, to the community, ever since day one. Our mission is to bring people together in the flesh and blood through the common language of playing great games. And to me, AI works against this core design ethos. The mission to bring people together in the flesh and blood while AI is replacing people in the flesh and blood. It strikes me as they didn't really think about how AI might go against their core philosophy. Instead of working together in person, it replaces people. And instead of having the common language of great games, it just simulates ideas. So if you really think about the core of Flesh and Blood, I believe that it completely works against AI. So that could be a good reason already to say that AI doesn't belong in Flesh and Blood. You might believe it can belong somewhere else. But in Flesh and Blood, it's really a game built around these very traditional in-store experiences that have been set up by games like Magic the Gathering, where it used to be the classic experience. And AI is not the classic experience. Here's some consequences of AI I want to put first before we talk about the actual controversy and the opinions, because I want you to know some things about AI if you feel like you're not really sure what's going on. That way, when I talk about it later, you'll understand where I'm coming from. So the first consequence of AI is the environmental impact. AI chews through a lot of resources, and it's really speeding up the rate at which Earth is dying. It is contributing to climate change through fossil fuels. They need electricity, and electricity typically comes from fossil fuels. Water usage, so that's water to cool down computers. And they also need to clear some land to put these data centers in. So these three environmental impacts are all having an effect on climate change and fastening and worsening the rate at which the world runs out of resources and we all kind of die in all likelihood. This is coming sooner and sooner. As a young person, I have a lot to fear about this climate change, and I think that we all do. So I hope that you can understand that even if you might debate AI's effect on climate change is smaller than a lot of people believe it is, there are some evidence to show it's bigger or larger, depending on who you get your evidence from, but it is making an impact, and that is notable. AI models also use stolen data to make their images and text. We're going to focus mostly on the image side today. I don't believe there's any evidence that Flesh and Blood has used text AI. So these companies that train these data models, they need to get all these images and tell the algorithm what it is. So they need to get all these images off the internet. So think about Google image searching, or you can get private databases, so like artists' work on their individual pages. All these sorts of things can be put into models to train them in order to make them better at simulating those ideas. This is theft. Nearly no artist consents to their artwork being put into these algorithms, and that goes for text, things like articles, YouTube videos, all these sorts of things. There are some companies that have consent forms where you can opt in or opt out of having AI trained with your information, but a lot of models just blatantly steal this information. This is especially important for artists. When an artist's work is stolen, it can be used to recreate that style of artwork now, and that will affect their job, which is the next impact. Artists then get to lose their job because they have fewer opportunities, because some of that job is now getting done by AI. They get pushed out of the field and have to get a different job or die, really. So these AI models are stealing the art from the artists, being trained on it, and then spitting back out that style, which then makes the artist less desirable because now the computer can do it. This is affecting lots of actual real-life people's jobs, and one direct way we'll see here is in concept art. Concept art is a real job, it's a real field. It's a job that LSS has hired people for before, and that AI image that we're going to get to soon is an example of how a concept artist has lost that opportunity. And moreover than that, it kind of just erodes all the trust from artists. Artists don't know if LSS is going to continue using AI and over the next 2 decades or decade or even 2 years up that AI usage, which will again push more and more artists out of the job, push developers out of the job, could even push story writers out of the job, all sorts of creatives. Or if they're going to continue to only use it in this small way, but that trust is really hard to get back once you have shown that you've used AI and as of yet not made a statement about what you're using it for and what the limitations are, other than a very short response from James White himself. So let's get into the actual thing that happened. On the 6th anniversary of Flesh and Blood, which was about a week ago, James White spoiled the return of Dromai with a new hero card and a new weapon card. The image for Dromai's art is AI generated. It was speculated at the time. Everyone kind of looked at that and knew that was AI, but it did get later confirmed by James White when he effectively doubled down on his opinion that it was okay to do this. So we know it's AI. The weapon next to Dromai, that's not an AI image. That is the original artwork for Dromai's first weapon. So here's some things that we could have had instead of this Dromai artwork, this AI artwork. We could have had a concept artist draw a picture of Dromai. LSS has, like I said, used concept artists before. It's a field that they have need for, really, because designers aren't necessarily artists, visual artists. So they need to communicate the ideas in their head onto some paper, and they work through an artist to do that. And concept artists are specialized in creating many mock-ups or ideas in looser sketches in quicker time, before a finalized artist will then make a very detailed version of that artwork. So you can see that on the screen right now. On the left side, there's the Glint the Quicksilver artwork, which would have taken tens of hours to make, probably. Whereas on the right side, you can see some concept art, which might have been a lot quicker. I would guess probably you could do that in an hour or maybe under 3 hours, depending on the workflow of the artist. And doing that helps you be more efficient, not wasting so much time on designs that then get scrapped. You kind of do this when you talk to an AI, when you use prompts. You tell the AI what you want, and then when they get it wrong, you prompt them a little bit more towards what you want. So this is a very direct taking of these concept artists, possibly, and other concept artists' position, where it's been replaced with an AI and doing almost the exact same job, but significantly worse and with more controversy. Another option that is free is to reuse art. LSS has a lot of art, and they could have put some of that art on this Dromai. We know that's true because the Cinders of Sandakai staff uses the artwork from Storm of Sandakai. It's the exact same art. So LSS clearly thinks this is an acceptable practice to reuse this artwork in the design process, of course. But for Dromai's hero art, they chose not to. So an example of what they could have done way easier is they could have used any art from a card with Dromai on it. So you could have got the hero art, young or old one. Red Hot there has a different image of Dromai if you want it to stand out as a different hero card. Could have also got some of the artworks from the story articles, which have artworks of Dromai that have never appeared on a card, which would make it very clear this is a new thing. So again, this is free, it looks nicer, and it has less controversy attached to it. And that's not what we got, unfortunately. Third alternative is simple drawings or blank spots or even copied images. So this is another free version where the developer can draw a very simple image on the card that shows just a vibe, basically, of what the card does. It can be silly or funny, doesn't have to look good. It can be done in less than 10 seconds, probably. If you want to instead copy an image, like photocopy or copy into a digital format, like you can see the Magic the Gathering alpha playtest cards at the bottom, I suspect those were photocopied. So you can see there are a few ways to get these images onto a card that are not expensive. It's generally free. May have some trademark issues if you're copying, but I don't know, I'm not in the field. And you can still draw. Drawing will not get you in copyright infringement. So let's get into some community opinions, not just what I'm thinking. I held a survey over the week, which received 81 responses from the Flesh and Blood community. These responses came from my Discord, the Iron Maiden Discord, as well as the Purple Discord, which is the official Flesh and Blood Discord, as well as my YouTube channel, but I doubt anyone actually went through there. This 81 responses, you have an 80% male respondent number, which is pretty standard for a TCG. You would expect a heavily dominated male field. I actually think we got a very decent number of female and non-binary or prefer not to say answers at nearly 10% female respondents. And if you combine the prefer not to say and non-binary, you're getting probably 10% there as well. So you're getting a pretty nice chunk of non-male respondents. And of course, being a TCG, it's known for having a large number of males in the field, so that makes sense as well. Of the demographics in age, we had 40% plus or minus a few percentage points for the 20-year-old category and the 30-year-old category. So these two categories together from 20 to 40 make up 80% of all respondents, which is mostly to be expected. These TCGs are mostly played by adults who have disposable income but aren't so old that they didn't grow up with it generally. So you can see that young adults make up a pretty decent percentage at 16%, which is very notable because young adults often have different opinions on AI. In my own personal experience, young adults have generally a more negative approach to AI, whereas 40-plus-year-olds are basically not represented in this survey, which is also very notable because many older people may have little idea about AI or be pro-AI. And that's just from my personal, what I see in the world, my personal opinion. But I think it's notable that we have a younger audience and no older audience, whereas we have 20 to 40 really well represented. Alright, let's get into the opinion side of this survey. The general opinions of AI, more than half the respondents at 55.6% are anti-AI. So that's in a general sense, not necessarily in this case. 40% roughly consider themselves to be neutral to AI, meaning they consider things case by case. They think it has some application, but not in other situations. Whereas a roughly 10%, less than 10% group is anti-AI. Pro-AI. They actually believe that AI has a strong place in these fields and that it should be pursued as a tool. So you can see that even already we're showing that a large majority of the Flesh and Blood community believes that AI is not useful at all, and another large chunk believes that AI is neutral. So you're seeing that very few people think this is a good thing, and a lot of people think this is between and anti, like they don't want it. 40% of people feel that the Flesh and Blood community is anti-AI. So a lot of people believe that generally the community has an anti-AI spin to it, while only 2.5% believe the community on a whole is pro-AI, which seems pretty standard as far as I'm concerned. You see a lot of anti-AI sentiment online and social media, and you don't tend to see as much pro-AI. And to me, that's because of a very good reason. But if we just look at this from a statistic standpoint, if you were a member of LSS looking at, do my players want this? You can see that no, a lot of players don't want this. This also shows that in general, the community is neutral to anti, like what we saw in the last demographic in the last pie chart. The anti-AI is the weight, whereas the central is actually neutral, not pro-AI. We can also see that a quarter of respondents say that generally people are uninformed. This doesn't show a direct stance on AI. It could show that someone believes that people are uninformed and then they're upset, or that people are uninformed and therefore they're pro-AI. Could go either way. But we clearly need more information from LSS, and we need more information to be shared, which is one of the reasons why I've decided to make this video. 20% believe that there's a roughly even split between people who are pro-AI and anti-AI. This is decidedly untrue if you believe this survey. we have very few pro AI in the community, whereas a majority is anti AI. So that 20% are seeing some 50-50 split between pro and anti AI sentiments, and that might be more vocal minority on the pro AI side. 11% believe that AI community opinions are neutral, as in a lot of people don't really care or consider things piece by piece or case by case, which is somewhat true. We had a pretty big chunk being neutral in our last question. Next question, what do we believe about the Dromai situation? So we're getting particular about Dromai. 50% of respondents believe that AI had no place in TCG or concept art. So this 50% believes that LSS should not be using AI behind the scenes for their concept art or in any other way. And specifically for this Dromai situation, that Dromai's artwork should have been one of those other things, and it should not have been AI. This shows that about 5% of people believe that AI is negative generally from the first question about AI, but it's useful in this situation. So 5% of people voted for they are anti-AI, but they voted for, in this situation, 5% less voted that AI has no place. So it's clear that a lot of the community, and we're going to see that in the next section, believe that it's a case-by-case question. 22% believing it's a neutral question, and some of that probably would have come from the 5% that didn't answer that AI does not belong in this field. Nearly 25% believe AI has a place in TCG or concept art. So this is the pro AI in TCG field. It's very notable. It's larger than the generally pro AI. So we can see that some of those neutral people have moved into believing that James White's response about the hammer might be true, and that AI does have a place in making the game more efficient, is generally the argument. We'll see soon some written opinions. In the opinions free voting, so this is people can vote for any number of these, the most popular opinion about the discourse is that AI is being normalized. So that doesn't actually show if people is considering that negative, like AI is being normalized and that's bad, or if people are more neutral, like AI is being normalized and that's kind of fine. For me, that would be a very negative thing to answer, that AI is becoming normalized. It's becoming a normal part of society, and I don't think it should be. We don't know what the 37 respondents here believe necessarily, unless you go through all the data, but we can see that there is generally a lot of people believing that AI is becoming normal. The next most popular opinions are that players are overreacting. This response is very likely to be made up by people who are pro-AI or at least neutral to AI, and believe that the response that James White got from his post were overreactions to the AI art. This pairs along with the most players don't care answer, which push vocal minority arguments, as in there is a lot of people who are overreacting, but those people are a vocal minority of the community, whereas most people don't care. I would assume that people who answered with the overreaction also likely answered with the most players don't care, because they pair well together in the vocal minority argument. The next most popular two were the 23% claim that players need to be more vocal and stand up for their beliefs, and 18.5% say players' concerns are being ignored, pushed away by James White's response, and silenced by the community. So we can see a pretty big divide in the community. There's a sizable chunk that believe that players are overreacting and that a lot of people don't care about the situation. But there's also a very large chunk that consider players have been squished, their opinions not being heard, and that they need to be more vocal and stand up for that belief against AI, presumably. We're going to get into some individual responses now. I'm not going to read them because some of them are very long, but if you want to pause the video, there'll be some responses up on the right side that show what I'm talking about. If you look at this chart here, the green sections are AI in concept art is okay, but not in the final product. That was the most positive AI opinions I could find. Nearly no one argued that AI was good everywhere. I don't think anyone argued in here that AI is good everywhere. People argued it was okay in concept art. The blue sections are players that believe that AI is not okay anywhere. The purple people believe that the community is overreacting. And the red ones are very complex answers that have yes and no's, positives and negatives for AI, or they're very neutral, and we'll get to that soon, you'll see what I mean. But you can see that there's a very large chunk of green text here, people that believe that AI is okay if it's in concept and not final product. And there's also a very large amount of blue here, nearly 50-50, maybe slightly green favored, of people that believe that AI should not be anywhere in the game. So for the green responses, these are people who believe that concept art is okay to be made of AI. Many of the responses of these green sections, the yes in concept, no in final product people, say that concept art is okay, final product is not. They make it very clear that they are pro-efficiency. They want LSS to have hyper efficient and run as a smooth business, and they're not necessarily against the protest of players. Some of these are more against the protest of players, while some of them, and maybe a majority, are okay with players protesting. This opinion also seems to be James White's opinion. His response about the tool, about the hammer analogy, shows this kind of opinion where efficiency trumps the other issues with AI. When asked about the community response, the people who answered yes concept, no final product, their answers kind of turned more like this, where they're saying that LSS has never used AI in final product as far as we as far as we know. And players are overreacting a little bit over something that is okay. In their opinion, concept art is okay, and there's a little bit of overreaction going on about the AI art in non-final products. These respondents consider AI to be valid as a tool, agreeing with James White's hammer argument, and don't tend to bring up any of the negative consequences of AI at all. They only see it as a pro-efficiency tool that has no problematic issues and is being overreacted to. The blue responses are people who are against AI in all ways. These responses used anti-AI arguments, including environmental, like we talked about, but also the art stealing side often. That was the most often cited opinion for these blue sections of people who believed that AI stealing artworks and then therefore stealing the jobs of artists was really negative. And some people were really worried about AI using the artwork of LSS hired artists, Flesh and Blood artists. And of course, ecological issues. When asked about community responses, they said that AI was stealing jobs from concept artists, and they were trying to highlight the ease of other methods. So a lot of the responses here were people arguing that there was many other ways to complete this art, like we talked about before, like stick figures, sketches, copying, stuff like that. And that would have been less damaging to trust in the environment, artists' jobs, all sorts of things like that. Another opinion that we saw a lot in the blue sections was that they were worried about the future of the industry and of the planet, claimed that LSS needed direct feedback and players need to protest in order to course correct. These people are worried about things like climate change or the industry becoming overrun with AI, and therefore losing a lot of that human touch that makes LSS really so special. Many respondents in the blue section also expressed disappointment in James White's hand-waving of the community's response. The argument about the hammer was not persuasive to these people, and it's not persuasive to me personally. This respondent on the right side is concerned about public opinions and private morals, saying that LSS is publicly very pro-human, doesn't seem to be a company that uses AI, but privately might be using AI significantly. We just don't know. And this person has become worried that the game that they love is actually secretly being made a lot by AI. So this is another reason we really need a statement from LSS to restore trust from players and artists, hopefully, and clear the air. If there is a positive statement, that is. Of course, they could double down again, and that would further alienate many players. In the purple section, you can see these are people who believe that the community is overreacting. There are two types of responses here. Many of these responses are really negative and very mean. This person calling people who are anti-AI feral animals. We saw a lot of very rude language, very direct or harmful language in these sections where people believed that the social media discourse was very overreacting and they were very negative about it. The other type was a bit more passive. There was very few of these, but there was some. They say that people are overreacting, but they maybe should. They say that there is a valid complaint that won't be addressed. So this person maybe believes that, yes, people are overreacting, but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't overreact. It just means that it's useless. And that's what you're going to see in the red section. A lot of these people believed that fighting against AI in this industry was pretty useless. So you can see that if you read some of these, there's the answer that society on a whole is accepting AI, and therefore LSS using it isn't a big deal because it's everywhere. Some people are negative about that. It's everywhere, it's taking over the world, and that's sad. Some people are more passive about it. It's everywhere already. There's no putting the cat back in the bag, so we might as well just let it go. So this is a very pessimistic or passive argument. You can also see some of the red ones were very pro and negative. Some of them very negative, but still believing that it's not worth fighting over, basically. I want to close this video out with my response to three types of people: the community, the content creators, and to LSS. If anyone in the community is watching, I'm sure you are. Most of my viewers, I'm sure, are in the community and not in other sections. It seems that nearly none of the community wants AI, and no one wants AI in the final product, it seems. I haven't heard that opinion once. Everyone is very vocal about wanting AI to stay out of final products. Protesting this decision to show us AI in the concept phase, makes it less likely that LSS will use AI in final products or in further development. Shutting down your fellow community members who are protesting is giving LSS a free ticket to push the AI envelope. If they wanted to, they could use this backlash to push AI a little bit more, and the people who are arguing that there is an overreaction are helping that happen. By protesting, we're letting LSS know that we do not want this in our game or your game. Well, it's everyone's game now. The community counts too. And I think that's really important. So please stop shutting each other down. Valid and non-rude arguments, that's okay. Conversations with each other, of course, but I'm seeing a lot of shutting down and rude comments between community members. To content creators, there are already a few very prominent content creators who use AI for their thumbnails, their profiles, other things like that. If any of those people are watching this, or if you are thinking about becoming a content creator and you can't imagine yourself making a thumbnail, I hope you see that the community dislikes AI content on a whole, and the people who accept it, even those people who think it's neutral, are only half the community. You're contributing to a loss in viewers, likely, by making these AI thumbnails, and you're also taking jobs. AI thumbnails, for example, you could have been hiring an artist to do that. I understand lots of people don't want to pay anyone. You can do that. You can find images online. It's not very hard. And there's also the environmental impact. So there are a few community content creators that I'm thinking of that I won't name, and I really hope that this message gets out. I think that we have to be better. We have to be creating content, not putting words into the machine. And finally, to LSS. If any LSS staff is watching this, well, first off, thank you so much. I love your game. I hope that you can help spread my message among all the staff members and have a conversation about it. I love your game, players love this game, and the players dislike AI generally. More than 50% generally dislike AI. Even those who think AI is okay in concept art don't want anything more. I would hope that LSS is going to use other tools in their development, in their concept art, other than AI. And please make a statement. After you've figured out what you're going to use AI for, or if you're going to use it at all, we need a statement to restore the trust from a lot of the community. If there is no statement, or if there's a doubling down, there's going to be a large portion of the community that's going to become very detached from this game, and you might see people leaving the game or being dejected from being ignored. And remember, our mission is to bring people together in the flesh and blood through the common language of playing great games. Let's continue to meet in person in your stores, at the kitchen table, and play this great game while making it still be a great game, not offsetting it away from flesh and blood into machinery, but keeping it as a flesh and blood game, both from the creation side and from the player side. If you liked this video, it's a very different video to what I'd normally make. You can like, comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 666 subscribers, which we're very close to, so I can do something really special for that. You can also visit the Discord in the link in the description below. The Discord has a lot of people talking about Vinset at almost any time, because that's the normal content I make. So if you are interested in Vinset, or if you'd like to have further conversations about this AI, you can join that Discord and people will have conversations with you about either thing. Thank you for listening, and be good.